So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this third edition of the University Forum on Refugees. I'm pleased to point out that this University Forum on Refugees is the initiative of the UNI4 Refugee Project, a fruitful collaboration between University of Geneva and the University of Zurich, which aims to highlight the challenges faced by refugees in rebuilding national institutions and structure in their countries and to discuss sustainable solutions. This forum will explore the role of the university structures in the integration of refugees, and there is no better place to hold such a discussion than Geneva, one of the world's most active centers of multilateral diplomacy, where international humanitarian operations are coordinated, responses to global environmental challenges are formulated, and governments meet to negotiate decisive agreements on disarmament and conflict resolution, just to give you some examples. This International Geneva, as we call it, is marked by the legacy of Jean Calvin, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Henri Dunant, who helped to make Geneva a symbol of dialogue, peace, and democracy. In the 16th century, Calvin City was already welcoming the oppressed people of Europe, driven out by the Reformation, making openness to the world its trademark, if I may say. In the 18th century, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and other citizens of Geneva proposed the creation of a confederation of peoples to guarantee perpetual peace, inspired by the Swiss model. 100 years later, Henri Dunant laid the foundation stone of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Then other initiatives have followed, all driven by the same desire to defend human rights and have made Geneva a city deeply marked by humanism, by the defense of human rights, and by a long tradition of asylum and welcome, a city of international organization with a multicultural profile. The University of Geneva, fully integrated into its city, promotes this value by guaranteeing an environmental favorable to learning and critical reflection, an egalitarian framework for research, work, and study, and by committing itself in particular to preserving the academic freedom of its members, an indispensable condition for the full pursuit of its missions. Academic freedom, freedom of thought and speech, plurality of opinion, respect of human rights, sensitivity to different cultures, ethics, and humanism are values that are central to the University of Geneva. So it is no coincidence if one of our very first MOOC was devoted to human rights, if we welcome the Interfaculty Center for Children's Rights, if we have with the Geneva Graduate Institute the Geneva Center of Humanitarian Study, a unique teacher research and humanitarian exchange platform for humanitarian actions, if we created InZone, an original program launched in 2005 by our translation and interpreting faculty, designed for the victims of conflict, and which today meets the specific training needs of refugees in camps in order to make them actors of their own destiny. And you will have more detail about this program later from its director, Professor Karl Blanchet. And it is not a coincidence if we have been involved since 2008 in Scholar at Risk, an international network of institutions and individuals whose mission is to protect academics and defend academic freedom, and to protect academics whose lives and freedom are simply threatened. This commitment led us to set up Scholar at Risk Switzerland, the Swiss section of this international network in 2018. And more recently, we also joined the New University Exile Consortium and the Scholar Rescue Fund. And finally, it is not coincidence if in 2016, we launched the Horizon Academic Program in partnership with the Bureau de l'Intégration et de la Citoyenneté du Canton de Genève and the support of several private foundations. This program is the only one in Switzerland. It is an academic, professional, and social integration program for people from asylum and migration backgrounds, which provides a bridge to university studies and enhances the skills of refugees who have obtained a university degree in their country. And thanks to its Horizon academic program, our university has opened its door to refugees who have had to interrupt their studies in their country and help them to integrate socially and professionally. The concrete impact of this gateway on the integration of asylum seekers is either the opportunity to resume their study by enrolling in one of the higher education institutions in the canton of Geneva, such as the University of Geneva, the HSSO, or the Geneva Graduate Institution, or by taking another suitable career path. Unfortunately, the humanitarian emergencies around the world have become more frequent and longer lasting, which has put pressure on our reception capacity and forced us to change the way we operated. Our team have been able to rise to the challenge, and I would like to thank them for that. We have strengthened our system by creating in 2019 an entity dedicated to the integration of students and researchers from migrant backgrounds. With the integration delegation, the institution has decided to include these issues at the heart of its equality and diversity strategy. In addition, the war in Ukraine has inevitably led to a change in the scale of our activities. This meant keeping in mind fundamental elements that have been close to our hearts since the beginning of Horizon Academic, such as equal treatment for all participants in the Horizon Academic Program and the maintenance of high quality, caring supervision of students and researchers. It is our duty to focus our effort not only on the immediate future, but also on the long term on sustainability. Today, more than 500 people from the asylum sector representing nearly 50 different nationalities are enrolled in this program. So the activities to support researchers at risk have also gradually extended the responsibility of the Horizon Academic Program to include the monitoring of researchers at risk. In 2023, the University of Geneva welcomed 15 researchers from Ukraine, Turkey, Yemen, and Afghanistan. The increase in the number of researchers hosted at the University of Geneva was made possible by funding from the Swiss National Science Foundation and the establishment of the University of Geneva Research Grant, thanks again to private foundation in Geneva. So as you will have understood, the University of Geneva intends to assume its social responsibility within its host society by contributing to finding solutions to the major global challenges we faced and by being active, in particular, in the humanitarian domain where emergency situations are unfortunately still very present all around the globe, and by defending academic freedom and freedom of expression, which are today under increasing attack. And we are convinced that education is not just a fundamental human right, it is a global response to the real humanitarian need. So I thank you for your attention. I wish you a nice forum for this evening. Thank you.
So next, we will welcome Souhail Belhadj Klaz, researcher and visiting professor in the Master in International and Development Studies at the Graduate Institute. He holds a PhD in political science at Sciences Po Paris and benefits from 20 years of experience in research on politics in Syria and Tunisia, and is the author of the book La Syrie de Bachar al-Assad, Anatomie d'un régime autoritaire. With the support of the Gerda Henkel Foundation, he was the principal investigator of the 3-year project regarding Tunisia's security provision and local state authority in a time of transition. He's currently the leading investigator of the policy research project mapping military and security actors in the Syrian economy and is conducting in parallel research in migration, mobility, and the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership cooperation process. Please.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Many thanks, Stéphanie, not only for the introduction, but for the whole event, and to Camilla as well. And thanks for inviting me at the 2023 University Refugee Forum, and thanks to the organizer in general. So. My presentation is entitled Rebuilding Civil Society as Refugees, the Dilemma of Education and Humanitarian Assistance for Syrian Refugees in Turkey. So despite their strong growth since 2011, Non-Governmental Association of Syrian Refugees in Turkey, so just after the war, at the beginning of the war in Syria, were not fully effective and coordinated in meeting the desperate needs of Syrians in Turkey and Syria as well for food, water, housing, education, and more. I mean, everything. So lack of funding, lack of staff, lack of experience were the main obstacles to assisting people in need in Syria and in Turkey as well, and in Lebanon, Jordan, etc. But there were also, there was also a dilemma to be resolved at the time, and until now, so more or less. How to meet the crying educational needs of the Syrian population in order to preserve the future, while at the same time responding to the need for humanitarian assistance to preserve the present future. So according to the UNHCR, more than a half of the about almost 500,000 school-age Syrian children in Lebanon are not in the classroom. As of the 2020-21 academic year, over 35% of the 1.1 million Syrian children in Turkey were out of school. So many have missed out of 4 or more years of education. UNICEF has estimated that an additional 80,000 teachers are needed to close this gap. So it's a huge educational concern, a huge one. So the future is more or less closed. Mandate was given a few years ago by the Global Studies Institute, le GSI, at the UNIJ, to carry out a survey on civil societies and war. I was assigned by the Graduate Institutes, the Center on Conflict Development and Peace Building, CCDP, to carry out this survey in Gaziantep, Turkey. So Gaziantep is not far from the northern Syrian border. So the city is home to some 462,000 of Syrians. So I focus now on education humanitarian assistance dilemma. So Syrian or foreign donors legitimately impose constraint to NGOs, to Syrian NGOs. I mean, not only Syrian, but everywhere in the world. And I quote one of the NGO representative Syrian one we met in Gaziantep. So we did two or three. I mean, we made maybe 15, 20 days of inquiry. I mean, of investigations, and we did maybe 2 or 3 very huge focal points. And we gathered all the representatives of NGOs, Syrian NGOs in Gaziantep. So to do a focus group. Sorry. And I quote one of them. So we were talking in a discussion. Donors make political choices. They invest in some project and not in others. We have to adapt to donors' preferences if we want to survive as an association. We are obliged to devote ourselves to humanitarian actions, whereas our original projects were educational and aimed at mentoring young people. So at the time, it was years ago, most educational associations in Gaziantep were required to justify humanitarian action in order to obtain funding in Syria and in Gaziantep as well, and in Turkey in general. But they also encountered local operational hurdles. So I quote another one. He told us, we started an action on the ground, but our concerns were different from those of the local councils. And at the time in Syria, local councils used to change with the new warlord, etc. We therefore ended our cooperation with Ariha and put our resources at the service of Syrians in Gaziantep. Some association, I mean, within this context, some associations have found solution to this humanitarian educational dilemma. So this was the case of Shafaq organization, which originally specialized in humanitarian assistance in Aleppo, but then used to extend its activities to the rehabilitation of schools. So it's another way to feed some educational needs, not only in teaching, but just in rehabilitation of schools. Training young adults to develop and implement projects, it's another way, and so on. So other associations, such as the Syrian Civil Coalition, have reduced the share of humanitarian aid in their activities to focus more on the next phase of the country's reconstruction. And trying to structure civil society was one of the main goals regarding reconstruction and regarding the future of Syria. During the focus group sessions, we organized to carry out our survey. One project was presented to strengthen the governance capacities of Syrian civil society, notably through the creation of a database and knowledge base on Syrian civil society and the war economy, or through the creation of an association to promote the exchange of information between Syrian organizations, particularly in terms of course, organization, but management, logistics, etc. So based on these discussions, a project idea emerged during the focus group session. The creation, with the support of higher education institutions in Europe countries, of a research center run by Syrian researcher on Syrian civil society, because it didn't exist. I mean, it doesn't exist at the time. So we thought that this was a brilliant idea, as Syrian civil society, both inside and outside the country, along with Syrian refugees, lacked the data it needed to structure itself. I mean, for example, how many associations are there? Where are they located? Are they active or inactive? What is the average lifespan of an association? What resources do they have? What type of funding? What does funding come from? Public, private, institutional, etc. So these data are essential for diagnosis. And these diagnoses are necessary to establish strategy for Syrian civil society organizations. So strategy, long-term projects, action plans, etc. So in short, to rationalize action so that it meets the expectation of people in need. Furthermore, as one of the association representatives present put it, we could also use this center to provide training for young people and association leaders. This project would be useful, I quote him, this project will be useful in our quest to rebuild a civil society with a view to establishing lasting peace in Syria. So I came back in Switzerland, in Geneva, and with colleagues, we try to raise awareness among institutions, particularly at European level, la Commission Européenne, European Commission, to implement this project. So there was no lack of goodwill, for sure. I mean, the people we met were really honestly interested in the project. The practical obstacles did exist, linked to the precariousness of the refugees' situation. So, as a Syrian refugee, an association activist in Gaziantep mentioned, if Turkey, so one of those practical obstacles, if Turkey decides that we have to leave its territory, or if the United Nations stop funding us, our association will collapse, as we are totally dependent on these two sources of support, hosted by Turkey and money from UN and other international organization. So it wasn't. I mean, it's not. It's pretty difficult to implement this simple. I mean, the idea was brilliant, but finally, it was very difficult to implement this project. So, to my knowledge, so far, this project never concluded, unfortunately. But it remained a viable project where the academic community can make a direct and effective contribution. I'd like to end by quoting a member of a refugee civil society. So when we went there, it was they were suspicious about us. C'est naturel, okay? So we present the UNIJ letter, etc., and they were pretty engaged. I mean, they changed their mind, and I quote them. So when we arrived, they said, we accepted the invitation to take part in this workshop, because it was conceived within an academic framework. And the idea of Syrian civil society in the turmoil of war being analyzed from an academic point of view is of the utmost interest to us. But so, I'm still quoting him, but is this the first step toward deepening a dialogue, a future discussion between Syrian associative representatives and European civil society, or is it just another workshop? So unfortunately, it was another workshop, but we did our best to implement this structure and to implement this project. But he's still alive, and we're still struggling and trying to find solution to implement it. Many thanks.
So now I will give the floor to Anja Klug, who has had a professional career, and still has a professional career, spanning over 25 years within UNHCR. She began her career at UNHCR as a legal advisor in Bonn. In 2004, she was appointed to the legal department at the organization headquarters in Geneva. Initially tasked with legal issues concerning asylum law harmonization in the European Union. She later developed UNHCR policy and legal position in the realm of refugee protection and migration. Anja Klug played a pivotal role in establishing integrated regional strategies for regions significantly affected by large-scale migration and refugee flows. Following a year of service at the Global Forum for Migration and Development, she joined the UNHCR European Office in Geneva and Brussels in 2012. There, she oversaw various projects related to the Western Balkans, the situation of Afghan refugees in Europe, and refugee protection and border management. In early 2015, Anja Klug assumed the position of head of UNHCR Office Switzerland and Liechtenstein.
Dear organizers, dear participants, good afternoon to everybody. I have been asked to speak in English, even though I feel a bit strange to speak English in Geneva. So for those who are from Geneva, please apologize myself. Thank you for having invited me to this year's University Refugee Forum. It's already the second time I have the honor to attend such a forum. This forum is occurring in the context of the second Global Refugee Forum, taking place this week here in Geneva. I've seen the first people arriving already. The GIF, how we call it, is the world's largest high-level international gathering on refugee issues. It is organized every 4 years and is designed to support the practical implementation of the objectives set out in the 2018 Global Compact on refugees. Its goal is ambitious. It strives to enhance refugee self-reliance and release them from a lifelong dependence on humanitarian aid. Here in Switzerland, we can be proud that a framework such as the integration agenda was developed and adopted, and appreciate the progress which it has brought. The Global Compact is a similar effort on a larger scale, so to speak, an integration agenda of global reach. We are tackling these objectives at a time when forced displacement worldwide is continuing to grow. According to the last UNHCR's Global Trends report, the number of refugees rose to 35.3 million refugees in 2022, and the displaced population of 108.4 million. 2023 has sadly witnessed new conflicts and widespread violence, forcing people to seek refuge. I can just mention the Ukraine, the DRC, Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan, Myanmar, to name just a few. Despite such daunting figures, we at UNHCR, we are convinced that the ambitious goals of the GIF can be reached. They can be reached if we manage to shift our way of working towards cooperation and common solution, towards solidarity with host countries, and towards a process which includes all stakeholders who can and are willing to contribute. This includes first and foremost refugees themselves, but also academic institutions such as yours. The GIF is an opportunity to connect actors and action through which results can be achieved. To enable host societies to fully benefit from the potentials of refugees, education is key. And it is therefore one of the GIF's priority areas. States and other stakeholders, including higher education institutions, are called upon to pledge on the advancement of common and sustainable goals. 3 multi-stakeholder pledges on education have been developed. Access for all refugee children to safe, quality, and relevant education opportunities and inclusion in national education systems. Secondly, 15% of refugee youth enrollment in higher education by 2030. And thirdly, access to high-quality digital learning opportunities for refugees. I invite you and your institution to consider engaging in favor of these shared objectives if you have not done so already. Background and basis for these pledges is the UNHCR Refugee Education 2030 strategy, which aims at enabling all refugee children and youth and their hosting communities to access inclusive and equitable quality education, including at tertiary level. UNHCR inter alia strongly advocates for the recognition of previous qualifications, for greater access to enrollment in universities and other tertiary education institutions, and investment in scholarship offers. The creation of education pathways which enable refugees to move to a third country in a safe and regulated way to study while meeting their international protection needs is also an important contribution to durable solutions we wish to promote. Education belongs to Switzerland's main areas of engagement for the GIF process as well. Most importantly, through a continued engagement in the Geneva Global Hub for Education in Emergencies, which was launched in 2021 and is now part of the Education Alliance. The Education Campus GIF side event earlier today brought together relevant actors striving to find innovative solutions in displacement situations where access to education is so crucial. I cannot but underline the importance of such exchange platforms. But even more important is to pay tribute to all the relentless efforts deployed by local actors involved in implementing these pledges and making change a reality. Education empowers. It gives refugees the knowledge and skills which they need to live productive, fulfilling, and independent lives in their host countries. But this is not all. Investing in durable in durable inclusion now and here will enable refugees to rebuild their communities and contribute to a durable return in future. I know these are long-term perspectives, but this is what is needed. Refugees themselves are playing a pivotal role in promoting access to education for their peers, as this year's Nansen Award winner proves. Abdullahi Mire is a former refugee from Somalia who grew up in Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya and graduated in journalism and public relations in Nairobi. After having been resettled to Norway, he finally felt the urge to come back to Kenya and establish a refugee-led organization which has opened 3 libraries in the camps and expanded learning opportunities for tens of thousands of displaced children and youth. The hope is that his project one day will also benefit displaced children and youth in other African countries, including his home country, Somalia. I'm very much looking forward to participating in the ceremony in his honor tomorrow. I would also like to recognize the progress which has been made here in Switzerland in advancing access to higher education for refugees. Around 30 initiatives from higher education institutions currently exist in Switzerland to facilitate refugees' access to academic careers. These need to be further developed and financially supported to allow a greater number of talented and motivated refugees to benefit. We will hear more about these programs and specific academic curricula focusing on post-conflict reconstruction tonight. Worldwide, only 7% of refugees have access to higher education. We are aiming at raising this level to 15% in 7 years' time. There's still a lot to do. All those present today can contribute, must contribute to achieving this goal. Let me highlight once more. Having perspectives and access to education gives hope away from home and a feeling of belonging to the host society. But it also gives refugees the tools to heal and start anew, if and when return to their country of origin will be possible in a safe and dignified manner. In Mire's words, once you have education, you can rebuild your country. You can rebuild your life. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish us all a fruitful evening.